So, someone I could start.
Anytime they daddy.
Right. So, I understand you have an extremely long and well-read insight into the concept of the conflict on the Gaza Strip, but there are some mistakes in your presentation. One, the moot, as I understood it was presented, was that Israel are the oppressors in the conflict over the Gaza Strip.
Yes.
What you discussed instead was the cause of the conflict on the Gaza Strip, A, and B, make some mistakes in terms of the cause. You highlight Israel as the cause. Although the argument is not whether or not Israel is the cause, that could be taken a number of different ways. Yes, the Zionist movement ushered in a wave of nationalism towards the Jewish people wanting to highlight their own state and their own nationhood, and wanting that fulfilled after being displaced for thousands of years. And while that is understandable, I could also understand why another people who had been living on our land for 1,000 years should not be displaced. I'm not arguing that. I'm also not arguing whether or not conflict took place in 1947 over the Gaza Strip and Israel, and concerning Israel and Palestine as these two parties.
Right.
The mistake, however, we make is that the Zionist movement was a warrior movement. It was a religious movement that attempted to have the Jewish people highlight their own state, and that concept, even in your notes, is not highlighted as a warmongering or a vicious or aggressive concept. The League of Nations mandate by Britain after World War II causes some problems in contemporary understanding, but at the same time by questioning that, we question the nationhood and the nationality and the citizenship of the Polish, of the Italians, of the French, of the German, of the Dutch. Not the Dutch, sorry. I'll stop at the Germans. As long as we question the League of Nations mandate, which is all right and justifiable to question, we question a number of different nationalities that took place since World War II, which actually highlights half of Europe. And while it's okay to question that, it's also equally not okay to justify that as the cause of war, or to use that to highlight oppressors, because then we would have highlighted half of Europe as oppressors, when in fact that is not so. The final and probably the most pertinent problem that you're making is the most pertinent problem, which gets to the problem of the 2008 conflict over Israel, between the Israelis and the Palestinians, is the 1947 conflict over Israel. You had highlighted Israel as the aggressors in this conflict, when in fact the history shows that not to be so. In 1947, the mandate over Israel was changed by the then United Nations. Well, the League of Nations had already evolved into the United Nations, and the mandate was that Israel, it wasn't Israel in name, but in stature and nationality and nationhood, that Israel, as it was, would be divided into two parts, a Palestinian and an Israeli part. While that had taken place in a democratic manner, the Palestinians had declined. As any nation has the right to decline in the United Nations General Assembly, the Arabs declined. However, a majority of the individuals within the United Nations General Assembly passed the vote. And a number of different countries within that point in time, before and at 1947, had passed hands under similar General Assembly rules. The Arabs declined. Okay, in 1947, it was Palestine who had struck Israel on the Gaza Strip, involving another 5 Arab nations, including Lebanon and Syria, to attack Israel and to displace them from the land that had been given to them under United Nations mandate in 1947. What is also interesting to note is that the same 1947 mandate that the Arabs declined to accept in 1947, they begged the acceptance of in 2008, in increasing conflict, in an opportunity to replace the displaced Palestinians back into the same Israel that they do not like. because they understand that a sharing of that land means that Israel loses their nationhood one, and the Palestinians get to live on their land too. No, I'm not here to argue cause. All of that was cause. We are here to argue the oppressors, the aggressors, the not necessarily the wrong party, because in conflict and war there is no really right party. Both parties are seeking their own individual selfish interests. But as long as we take that to the next step where we oppress an already unarmed and unable people, that's something different. When Palestine took 5 other Arab nations' assistance in 1947, ignored the United Nations mandate, and attacked the Israelis, that was not oppressive in nature. It's not oppressive because they lost, or is it's not oppressive because Israel still has their land? Or I'm trying to understand, why is it not oppressive that one man took 5 of his friends and beat a man, attempted to beat a man at least, without any forewarning or alert? Attempted to displace him from his home. A man and his 5 partners tried to displace a man from his home. Is it not oppressive because they lost? Is it not oppressive because a group of people who attempted to take advantage of another group of people lost? If that's how we justify oppressive, then this argument needs to start on a completely new level, because then we need to define now oppression. If we are defining oppression the way everyone else has defined oppression, as a taking advantage, as a pushing down, a trampling over of our people, then we're looking at something completely different. And in that case, it becomes even more difficult to highlight that person, because both of these people had attempted to take advantage of other people. This is war, this is conflict. There's no peaceful agreement, there's no shaking of hands. We attempted a peaceful agreement in the 1947 United Nations General Assembly mandate. Resolution was passed. This was voted upon. Those who said yes passed, and those who said no did not pass. The mandate, the resolution was passed, and the objective was for Israel to be split in 2. The Arabs didn't like that. Okay. Instead, they wanted it to split into 1. They wanted to split it into Arab 1, and they did not get that, and now it's oppressive. When they could have shared the land, and now in 2008 they want to share the land. They just want to send the Palestinians back home, even though that was an option presented to them before. Well, I'm trying to understand exactly where the oppression lies if they had been the persons who struck first. This goes beyond cause now. They had attempted to oppress the Israeli people, and now when the tables have turned and the Israelis have found an opportunity to defend themselves and find their place and retain their home, they retain the home that they would have actually been willing to share before with the Palestinians. Now they have attempted to defend the home that the Arabs told them they did not want to share with them. They have defended their home, and that becomes oppressive. After 6 Arab nations attempted to displace them in 1947, and I find it even more interesting that same 1947 mandate is now something to accept and condone and to fall in love with from the Arab people. I'd love if somebody could explain to me how then the Arabs fall back to that 1947 mandate that they disagreed with so heavily to call troops to war and to attempt to displace the Israeli people. The fact of the matter is, although I've repeated myself a lot, I think it's necessary to drive this point home. They attacked Israel first. They attempted to displace them out of the land that was supposed to be shared. They had told Israel, I don't want half of the cake, I want all. I want my half and yours. And they ended up losing their own cake, and now it's oppression.
Okay, Angelo.